In color, the continuing story of Peyton Place. Starring Dorothy Malone as Constance Mackenzie, Ed Nelson as Michael Rossi, Ryan O'Neal as Rodney Harrington, Barbara Parkins as Betty Anderson, Tim O'Connor as Elliot Carson, Christopher Connolly as Norman Harrington, Patricia Morrow as Rita Harrington, James Douglas as Stephen Cord.
Several weeks have passed since Lee Weber was arrested for the murder of Ann Howard. During that time, he spent his days and nights in a small cell in the county jail. Now, the charges against Lee have been dropped. He's been released after an investigation and a hearing, and he has returned to his home and family.
Well, speak up, speak up.
Like I always said, little brother, they never made the job that could keep me or the jail that could hold me. Or the chick that could walk herself out of my life. Packing, Sandy?
Well,
that's very thoughtful of you, honey. It's very nice, but you see, we're not going to take any trips just now. It's a matter of fact, we don't have to go anyplace now. I'm a free man. So we can all stay here together and look the town straight in the eyes, right, Chris?
I'll put these things away.
Sandy, we don't have to go anyplace for a second honeymoon. Well, soldier, we've been through the wars, huh? How about a truce?
Don't try to con me, Lee.
What are you talking about?
You know why Sandy had the suitcase out, and you know how I feel about you being released.
You're right, Chris. I knew what was going on when I walked in the door, but I guess I just didn't want to believe it. A man doesn't like to think that his own family would rather see him strapped in an electric chair than walk in his own front door.
Well, how do you think we should feel?
Well, fresh, clean, brand new, just like me. Sandy? Listen, I want to set the record straight with both of you. Now, sitting in a jail cell, it does a lot for your outlook on life. It's like a whole overhaul from ignition to transmission. Suddenly, you start thinking about the things that really matter to you, the things that really count.
And what really counts to you, Lee, is Sandy and I, right?
That's right, Chris. All that counts.
That groove's a little warm.
What I did to you was 18 years ago, Chris. How long are you going to make me pay for it?
Let's set the account straight, Lee. You haven't begun to pay, not yet.
Huh? Feel these hands. Huh? I got the cuts and the calluses, and you got the college degrees. Everything that you've ever learned, I've paid for.
I was taken in for a long time by that soft talk about my hard-working, martyred brother. But no more, not after you murdered Ann Howard.
Now, they said I was innocent. Why isn't that verdict final here, too?
Nobody said you were innocent, Lee.
Well, they said they didn't have enough to prove I was guilty. It's the same thing.
Not quite. All you have to do is slip once, mention one thing, when you're drunk or mad or asleep, and they just might want to march you right back into that courtroom.
Do you think that'll happen?
Oh, yes. I'm gonna make it happen.
What about you, Sandy? You still want to leave?
Can't you stop it? Will you just shut up?
Listen, I have to admit I was a little burned when you first told me about kissing Rodney.
Nothing else happened, nothing. Just one kiss.
Well, everything's okay then. From here on in, we can have a real marriage. Listen, Chris. I know what it must have taken for you to get up and lie on that witness stand about Ann and I on the bluff. Oh, you hate your brother, don't you? Hmm? That was perjury, Chris. And if somebody wanted to push the issue, all of your studying would go right down the drain. You'd never be a lawyer here Or any place else.
Is that the club you're holding over my head?
No more clubs. No more threats, no more fights. And if it means anything to you, Chris, I forgive you.
You forgive me.
Sandy, why don't you fix me some of that tuna salad that you're so good at making? Maybe a little bit of hot cider, huh? You know, I missed your food almost as much as I missed this.
I'll go fix something.
Yes? Yes?
Good morning, Dr. Ross.
Oh, hello, Rachel.
You said we could talk this morning.
Hmm?
You know about a job for me here.
Oh, yeah, well,
Oh, it's all right. I can come back later.
No, wait a minute. Look, I've done a lot of thinking about it. It's just that, well, these things take time.
You're mad, aren't you?
Hmm?
Because they let him go. I remember him.
Remember him, how?
That day in the police station. I remember the way he looked at me. I know that look. It's the look I get from Jack Chandler. Mrs. Healy said that this Lee Weber ought to be locked up where no one can ever get him out. I heard her talking with Miss Choate. They talked about Ann Howard, too.
Look, I don't know what you heard when Mrs. Healy and Miss Choate were gossiping, but I'd just as soon not have a blow-by-blow description, if you don't mind.
There's nothing wrong with talking about someone who's gone. Not if it's someone you cared about. You cared an awful lot for her, didn't you?
Rachel, I'd just as soon not talk about it, thank you.
You'd feel better if you did.
Rachel, listen to me. Everything is so simple for you, isn't it? I mean, you have a problem, then you just talk about it, huh?
I know how I felt when my mother and father died. And I know how I felt all those years I kept it locked up inside me. And one of the reasons it hurt so bad was I didn't have anyone to talk to. Not even Aunt Lucy. And the other day, when I talked to Mrs. Carson about them, it didn't hurt so bad somehow. I mean, it hurt when I was telling her, but afterwards I felt a whole lot better.
Rachel, this is an entirely different situation.
No, it's not. You said she was special. Well, my mother and father were special to me, too.
Rachel, don't try and pressure me into talking now.
She wouldn't have, would she? You know, I don't think you could love anybody that kept after you about something. You have enough of it here with your work. And she didn't chase after you either.
What?
I bet she had you go after her.
Now, wait a minute, young lady.
I remember the first time I saw a boy I wanted to meet. He lived on the next farm, and his name was Tommy McNett.
Tommy McNett? What about the other boys?
Ann Howard had blonde hair, didn't she?
Yes.
How do you think I look in blonde hair?
Well, I like you with your own color hair.
Well, I thought it might be fun to change it.
You know what I think?
What?
I think if I ever catch you with blonde hair, I will give you the spanking of your life. That's what I think. Now, come on, we'll talk about your job later, huh?
Do you?
Tommy McNett?
Yes?
Mr. Cord, Rodney Harrington is here to see you.
Well, send him in.
Yes, sir.
Stephen.
What is it?
Well, I just had to talk to you.
Well, we've never been much good at talking, Rod.
So what happened in the courtroom? The way you found... Well, the way we all found out.
What do you want me to do? Stick out my hand and say, welcome, brother?
Stephen. I just want you to know I'm sorry.
For whom? Yourself? Norman? Me? All the grandsons?
Look, she was my mother, too. Yours and mine.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. It's all so new to me. I keep thinking of her as that woman at the head of the stairs. What was her name? Mrs. Harrington? You know, the one who had her picture over the mantel in the living room? The one with the two darling little boys, Rodney and Norman?
It's amazing. After all that's happened, all you feel is self-pity.
Oh, why shouldn't I feel that? Should I be doing handstands, turning cartwheels? Have I made it through the initiation period? Am I an active member of the fraternity now? Are the brothers really glad to have me? Rod, you forgot to show me the secret handshake.
What's with you, Stephen? I was in that courtroom, too. I heard Hannah Court's testimony, too, you know. What gives you the monopoly on feeling pain? Okay, we're half-brothers. Now, that's a biological fact. When are you going to accept it?
I accept the biological fact. It's an accident of nature. It's what you're trying to make out of it that I won't accept. Now, let's not turn this into a lasting relationship that demands respect and affection. It's not there. It won't work. Now, we've always hated each other. We always will.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing.
Oh, you're wrong, Stephen. You're wrong. We can forget the past if we're big enough.
Oh, it is so easy for you to be big, isn't it? What if the situation were reversed? What if the world had just been told you were the illegitimate son instead of me?
Okay, well, you nurture that hate you claim we have for each other. You make it grow.
Oh, stop it. What are you two doing to each other? Hasn't everyone been hurt enough?
I was just leaving.
Stephen, why can't we forget what our mothers and fathers did? Why can't we start now, today? It could be different.
There is only one thing that's different now, and people aren't going to forget it. I am a Peyton.
The rotten part of it is I helped turn him loose.
You merely told the truth.
The truth is I let her down, Connie.
If Mr. Fowler can come up with something more concrete, they can still make him stand trial. Maybe even get a conviction.
Yeah, if Fowler can come up with something more concrete, and if I hadn't had an emergency that day, and if Ann would have stayed inside the cottage rather than going out on the bluff, if, and so on and so forth.
Don't, Mike. It won't help.
Here, no, nothing will help, nothing will bring her back, but I just can't tell you what I felt like watching him come out of that courtroom with a sneer on his face. I mean, what kind of a man am I to let him get away with that?
You're the kind of man that Ann Howard loved. The kind of man who cares enough about human rights to sift out the facts and tell only those. Even though it might end up helping Lee Weber.
Thanks, Connie. I was so thankful to have you for a friend. You helped me so much.
I'm glad I could.
Listen, actually, I kind of set you up for a favor.
Oh, ask away.
It's about Rachel.
What are you trying to tell me, Michael?
Well, you see, she's become attached to me.
Attached?
Yeah, she follows me around. She needs my approval of everything.
Seems to me she has a crush on you.
Connie, that's ridiculous. I mean, the girl's 18 years old. She's just taking a substitute guardian. That's all. That's all right. I don't mind being her guardian for a while. It's just that, well, she needs certain things. She needs clothes, some, well, girls' things. I can't go with her.
And I can. And I'd be delighted. I'll pick her up this afternoon if I can get a babysitter.
Oh, swell. That'd be swell, Connie. Thank you. Listen, send me the bill for everything, will you? Well, I think doctors ought to make more house calls, don't you?
Absolutely.